Mr. Khatri just started the comedian part, so let me just start with that. You know, we have the eminent guests over here, and I've been asked to quiz them and probably help all of us to ensure that we get a more understanding around the Internet of Things. So before we get into the question and answer sessions or kind of a panel kind of a discussion, it's important to understand why are we discussing and why are we having this entire ecosystem around us here today. See, we have seen the mobile evolution, which has passed us for the last 15 years, and we have seen that it has been extremely successful. Now, why it became successful, there are various reasons to it. We have the things which were manufactured, and there were economies of scale which helped to evolve the entire industry. Then we had the right network providers or the integrators which came in and then really took the industry further. But at the same time, when we went into mobile internet, there was a need for applications. And then the applications came up. There was a need for smartphones. They were provided. And that is how the mobile internet age has gone further. And that is exactly why we are into a situation where we have Internet of Things. And again, if we have to reinvent this whole process, we need an ecosystem around Internet of Things or for the success of Internet of Things. And I'm honored and privileged to introduce this eminent guests over here to really discuss the various topics that may be now coming up after Paul's presentation that came up earlier in the morning. There are various things that we have to be aware of. It could be with respect to technology. It could be with respect to security that needs to be addressed. It is with respect to applications that need to be developed to ensure that we have the right solutions which are coming to solve our situations and circumstances that may come up at any given point of time. So today, if I see around, we have the entire ecosystem over here. We have the person, the eminent scientist, I would say, who has been involved in development of different kinds of process chips, and then now moving forward into the Internet of Things in terms of video revolution, which is something. Plus, he is in his capacity also, together with Mr. Modi, driving the Digital India concept. So here is someone who is bringing in the knowledge with respect to how India will see the evolution of IoT going forward. Then we have Intel, Paul over here with us. Paul Leighton, where we will be talking around questions where embedded systems or computing requirements that are there, we need to see how we can resolve so that IoT can succeed faster. We have Mr. Gopalakrishnan, currently working on applications. What kind of applications and how we is it really necessary to have applications which SAP is already working? Can we draw knowledge out of what we are already facing, and how can we address it for Internet of Things? Paul is our eminent person over here who can help us in terms of how Fujitsu is looking at bringing different solutions or applications and bringing them together and how they can be applicable for our real lives. and with his vast experience in the software industry, then in the telecom industry, would be here to answer questions primarily on how Fujitsu will bring this Internet of Things into India and how we can bring it to you in the years to come. So, having set the stage, I would basically ask the first question to Paul Leighton. Specifically, if I look at security, I mean, we are going into Internet directly, or we are going through different kinds of things, but still with Internet. So how can we assure that we have security which can be brought in through systems that we are going to develop?
This is working, yeah. So firstly, thanks very much for the invitation to contribute to the conference. I guess security has many different facets, but as it relates to IoTG or IoT, for us, that's embedded at a silicon level, and as you go up through the layers of an architecture, whether it's a data level, analytics level, application level, security cannot be a siloed entity. So let me give you an example. In the energy sector, clearly there's a lot of critical infrastructure pieces in an energy architecture on the grid, and we launched something at the start of this year we call the critical infrastructure protection, and essentially that is for machine to machines to understand when they think they're talking to a certain device on the grid, they actually really know what that device is. And then if you extract that out to other sectors, for example, digital security surveillance is something that is being deployed very broadly around the world with that analytics. Well, you can almost survey any market worldwide on digital security surveillance, and there will be a response in terms of concern about the type of data they're actually capturing because it's citizen data. So how do you mask every single image that is coming live, real time, over a network of all these people that you may or may not wish to analyze? The requirement that puts on computing load in the back end is far greater than we ever thought we've been working on today. There's a project in Singapore going on right now where they tried to do this real time of basically every face that came over the digital security surveillance solution had to be masked. The best that could be done in the industry was around 86%, which basically means 14% of faces still got through. And it took 30 minutes to do that. We have to get to 100% and real time. And maybe SAP, the folks will talk a little bit about, in-memory database capabilities and things like that to help address some of these things. So that's kind of at a high level, both at a physical security and at a chip level security.
Thank you, Paul. Especially to the second question that I would like to really ask is on the application side. So how is SAP in terms of getting itself ready? In our short discussion that we had earlier, it came out pretty well that SAP has already started working on it, and probably there are certain solutions which are already available. So how have you developed the applications? Have you drawn certain knowledge already which is existing from the implementations that have been done? And I think SAP is doing a lot of, is already there in the market for almost 60 to 65% of the enterprises.
Sure. Completely understand it. I think what I want to emphasize on is this whole trend of the Internet of Things. What this is doing and what we should be focusing on is business model transformation. I think if you look at it in general, technology has played a very, very important role with existing internet connectivity. If you look at the Ubers of the world, if you look at the Airbnbs of the world, what they've done is they've completely disrupted transportation. They've completely disrupted the hoteling industry with Airbnb. They're much larger than the Hiltons of the world. Now, with the whole concept of connected devices, we're in for a huge revolution in terms of disruptions in manufacturing. We're talking about not only machine manufacturers, but consumers essentially having access to the right kind of data, machine fingerprints that can be available over networks that allow us to even decide what kind of monetary compensation needs to be done from a maintenance perspective. They can actually go from selling machines to actually leasing machines at some level. We're talking about transformations that will change the landscape in which manufacturing is taking place. To answer your specific question about SAP, we're actually working along the same lines where we're working with some large corporations and customers who are large in their own industries to figure out a way of connecting them together. We're talking about predictive maintenance. We're talking about something called the Asset Intelligence Network. It's essentially, basically, it takes fingerprints from the operating conditions of machines and ties it into what the manufacturer intended it to be used for. That makes them determine whether it's optimally used, whether it's suboptimally used, or should they even need to change the equipment. Visibility across multiple platforms is actually what's happening with the Internet of Things. A second item that actually probably Intel's already working on it, I would assume, is self-correcting machines. We're talking about machine fingerprints, machine use cases that are available over local networks, which are called fog networks. And essentially, the fog networks being embedded with intelligence that can react to machine problems, or machine autocorrection facilities that can be available. So as SAP, we're trying to kind of come up with business applications that will change the way companies operate. And just one last point, there is no difference today between an IT company or a manufacturing company or companies that operate in a particular field. Everybody at some level is starting to compete with each other. Compete with each other is one aspect of it, but also the fact that we need to collaborate to lift the ecosystem to get to where it is. So all of these are happening already. Is it early days? Yes, absolutely yes. But the point here is moving much, much faster than we ever thought it would. So that would be my 2 cents worth.
Right, and I think that basically brings me to the next question, especially from what you just mentioned, is if the organizations, and especially to Paul, right? Thank you for taking the, especially if we look into the organizations, we have seen that there are already CIOs, especially in India, and especially in your presentation, it came out very, very well, that India is already ahead in this curve in terms of acceptance of IoT, right? Because of our historical reasons that we are already one of the IT superhouses of the world. So obviously, we have taken a lot of things already. But incidentally, what came out very, very, very clearly in your presentation was considerations that need to be taken now. So what considerations does organizations who really are looking for using IoT, what needs to be taken up?
Yeah, there's a lot of answers to that question, but I'll try and condense it down to 1 or 2 thoughts rather than try and boil the ocean with an answer. I would say that the key considerations is cultural. I think you have to be ready to adopt and you have to be ready to experiment and try things. I think it's baby steps that will get people to a good strategy that allow them to adopt change. And the ability to experiment and accept the fact that some of those experiments won't work, the recognition that there's going to be a huge amount of data that you don't need, and trying to work a strategy that gets meaningful data that adds value to your business and to your enterprise. That kind of key considerations, and nobody will get that right straight off. Everyone's going to have to learn as they do, and there'll be use cases and experiences that you can share, and corporations that can help you, and obviously Fujitsu will be one of those that could support. So I think the key consideration is don't be afraid to start. Don't sit too long in the planning stage thinking about what the big revolution means. Start taking those initial steps. Use that bimodal approach, start doing some experimentation, try and move your organization forward in a fast way, and just start to really look at where you can add value to your business. And it will be, it's a bit like adopting a lean approach. In manufacturing a few years ago, lean was the key thing, and people looked at using and adopting lean as an approach. And the problem with lean is it doesn't give you an immediate return. you have to invest, and it's about empowering people and empowering thought to actually go and challenge the norm and improve incrementally your business. The same is true of the Internet of Things. You have to empower your technology to start to add value, but the immediate response isn't going to be the value you expected. It will come over time, but it's a journey that you need. The sooner you start the journey, the sooner you start to see the benefits. And the organizations that are starting the journey will be the winners, because the digital transformation and all the things we've talked about today, it is happening. It's an unstoppable tide of change. And the organizations that embrace that and go with it and really start to think about how they're going to add value to their business will be the winners.
Right, so with Andy being there, I would like to pose a very interesting question for the crowd over here, is how is Fujitsu bringing the Internet of Things into India?
Yeah, that's a big question as well. So I'll try and make it brief. But actually, as I was sat here tonight, I think one of the dawning realizations to me is one of the application areas that we kind of missed talking about tonight was how great the Internet of Things will be for comedy. Right? My view is that I think we've really missed a trick in talking today, because as I was listening to the comedy act beforehand, is that some really scary thoughts came into my mind. I mean, there's a couple of presentations today. Solomon talked about the great professor at Reading, who has a chip embedded into his arm, and he was connecting to the internet and able to listen and understand the thoughts of his wife. And I was thinking, my wife's already there. I mean, my wife has already told me, listen, don't bother saying anything to me because I already know what you're thinking, right? So in some ways, I think some people have already got there. So we may have a tougher sales challenge than I thought. The other scary thought I had was, in Paul's presentation, he had, the Internet of Things is going to include white goods. And, you'll have fridge talking, you'll have your kettle talking, the bathroom scales talking, your mirror talking to you. And in my life there's some scary scenarios, that brings up, I can imagine opening the fridge and the fridge saying to me is, Andy, you have already had too many calories today, you should really leave it alone. You should, you've had enough, one more beer is not going to make you any happier, you should just leave it. And then the next morning, you've done bad, you've had the other beer or other several beers or whatever it is, and you go to the bathroom scale said, listen, you should have listened to the damn fridge. There's no point in getting upset now. So actually some of these scenarios for me is, it may not all be good, right? And there may be some things which actually are going to change our lives in not so interesting ways. So I'm not sure I want to tell everybody how Fujitsu is going to help make that quicker, right? So there are some things that maybe we should just hold back a little bit, right? But maybe on a more serious note, is that I think Paul talked about these things happening at different pace, businesses looking at the way that we're going to think about things. And I think that for me is where we need to think more cleverly together. This thing about enabling digitization, business digital platforms, and how we can actually help accelerate businesses under control, get that digital balance that Paul presented. We're going to have things that our businesses rely on today, but we're going to have to experiment at great pace. So for me, Fujitsu is going to think about two things for India, and I think this thing about enabling this digital business platform, and the other thing is about this acceleration into cloud, really being able to scale up infrastructure in very seamless ways, working with great companies like SAP, with Intel, get much greater computing power there, get the great applications onto a way that people could consume much easier. And for me, those are some of the things that businesses could really do within India, and I'm looking forward to that challenge.
Thank you. Something which I want to, since we have discussed in terms of the readiness that we have. So, see, the readiness is there. It is the work that needs to go mutually from the experts, from the ecosystem and the user. I think that's more important, first of all. But before that, I would also like to put a question to Salman. How is the government looking at this whole IoT, Internet of Things, and how they want to bring it into India? Are there any policies that are coming up? Are there any policies that we will be devising? As Paul already mentioned, that we are kind of ahead of the curve as a country. So in the case of mobile, we saw a lot of policies, open-ended policies, open standard policies that came up from European telecom standards that the guys sat together and really came up with something which could be used globally. And that's why GSM and others expanded as they expanded. So are we also looking at some kind of policies that may be able to help the industry and the public in general in terms of embracing IoT in a successful way?
Sure. Thank you, Mayank. I think essentially currently the phase where the government is, they're trying to involve all industry bodies in terms of whoever is influencing the various kind of organizations that belong as its members. Large organizations and bodies have been asked to figure out, form committees which can go out in their area and see how Internet of Things can provide value-added inputs so that policies can be drafted. So that's the stage we're in from a very policy perspective. So we're very early days, just like the Internet of Things. But I guess it evolves a lot around the mobility as a fundamental core, because mobility is what the government has to deliver. Now, if that's the case, then most of the policies initially that's going to be framed is going to be framed in that area. And it's not easy where industry bodies have been asked to do this. And if I know in the country currently, most of the industry bodies are going across geographies and trying to form committees and subcommittees and give inputs to the government. On a more lighter note, first to Andy. Andy, I did meet the professor and asked him the question that, sir, why did you, is it worthwhile to have your wife? I wouldn't have, So he answered, no one volunteered, my son, and she was the only one who was willing to put a spindle in her spine. And so the choice. But coming to a more technology perspective, coming from a video base, what used to happen to technologies previously was you capture through a camera, you compress, and you decompress and send it on the other side. Today, the Internet of Things have also brought about a sudden change in the thought process of people who have been involved in that business. We're thinking today that how do we influence our social behavior through live motion video? Can you be, when you go to Japan, you kind of learn some of the things that they would happy to see, maybe a bow, and we do the traditional namaste. So if you are to break a social barrier, can we send a live video, and while I do a namaste, the person in Tokyo sees me bowing, and while he bows, he sees me doing a namaste, and vice versa. All that is possible, and the thought processes of researchers around the world who are working in similar technologies are going in that direction. The second part where it's going, it's scary, I will probably reserve it for later.
So I'm now ready for certain questions or your clarifications that you may have from the public.
Can I add one more thing to?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so in terms of standardization and what's happening globally with the Internet of Things, there is a group called IIC, and I believe Fujitsu is also part of the IIC.
Right.
And what companies are starting to do is there are technology players. See, if you look at IoT, it comes with 3 levels, right? You've got your device layer, you've got your connectivity layer, And then on top of that, you've got your applications and analytics and whatever else you need.
Right.
The point is, we have to come together as partners in different spheres. Even broad-based manufacturing companies coming to the game and creating solutions which will be the trendsetters for the future. And that's what IIC is intended to be. They set up what are called test beds. And you start experimenting with it, and the expectation is that standards will evolve from there. So that's where the standardization argument is going.
Mr. Srikanth, my question is for you.
Just take the name. Just.
So my name is
introduce
Paman
yourself.
Kumar Verma. I am a CIO, one is the energy company in Delhi, working for SAP service supports and data center and internet. My question is with you, Mr. Srikanth, because you are from SAP Labs. My question is basically SAP Labs. Now we are talking about the digital India, internet and all the things. Now SAP is still having R3 and ECC6, which is not in internet, only in internet basically. If we want to use the SAP in internet, it's very difficult basically. It's not, these are only very good and global business application across the world. Lot of industries using this application, SAP, and it's not available in internet. So you are from that team only, you are handling that internet business. So might be this more in technical, might be not supposed to answer by you, but I did not get last 10 years somebody from SAP India who's looking the internet and protocol things. Okay. That's why this is my question. So any vision, any roadmap for SAP engine, ECC6 or R3, apart from enterprise portal, are you moving in internet or only internet?
Okay, I don't know if you've seen the tagline that we use from SAP. SAP is first of all, a cloud company for the future. So all of our applications, regardless of which stack and what business applications we have, they're all cloud enabled. Some of them sooner than later, but fundamentally we believe that the cloud is the future. And this is where all SAP applications will sit. Of course, there are multiple models of cloud infrastructure that are available. There is the public cloud, there's the private cloud that's available. On-premise, which is essentially what you're talking about, which primarily is within the company's four walls, is actually slowly kind of giving way to the cloud. SAP is well on target there, where if companies are using it in the older models, they will evolve. It takes time. You can't rip and replace that easily. So we have a whole host of cloud applications, and the Internet of Things and the application set is just an extension of that. You need your core data, you need the newer paradigms that are coming into play. So first of all, we're a cloud company and we believe that's the future.
Okay, that's fine, but being a CIO, I have the problem with other computer like Microsoft and Oracle. Now they are in internet cloud. Basically, they are in internet. Their ERP is available on the internet. So being a CIO is difficult for me to managing and handling to my board and my customer, satisfy to my customer. Thing is not available on the internet, so we are facing this problem. So
yeah, that's a connectivity problem that needs to be solved, I assume, and that's.
So in India, if we are talking any ISP, give the 10 Mbps lease line. Oh, why you need 10 Mbps at your home? But we are talking US, Canada, and Singapore, 50 Mbps. Oh, you need only 50 Mbps. So this is the big problem basically in India, and I'm facing currently this problem because I'm dealing with the Indian Railways and government sectors, because I'm based from one tendering company. So internet problem is the biggest problem in India for ISP and all the telecoms.
I completely agree with you. That problem needs to be resolved. If what we're trying to do as a nation in terms of the whole concept of smart cities and whatever else we're doing, the first problem we need to solve is connectivity.
Thank you so much. So now I think people is talking with Mr. Modi. Somebody suggested Mr. Modi to do something for that, and for telecom industries as well as ISP. We will get 10 Mbps, 20 Mbps internet lease line at home. So we will do our business easy and satisfy our customers.
You know, I think here important is, yes, this is the need which is now coming up, right? It was also there earlier, but it has not been seen that much. But with that now coming in, I think India as a country is also gearing towards getting the infrastructure in place.
Thank you so
So
much.
there is an opportunity out there for all of us to address that.
Thank you so much.
Any other question? I think we are okay for two more questions, and then I think we. So next one is yourself.
Hello.
Just 1 minute. After this.
Hello.
After this question, it's yours.
Hello.
Yeah.
We are thinking about the internet of technology. I think my question is Mr. Chakravarti, could you suggest to Modi internet for agriculture? There are enormous opportunities, internet production and trading. The kind of customer you will get with the IoT, you will get thousands of customers, multiplied by thousands of customers in internet of agriculture. This because this country is agriculture country.
Correct.
We have, if you're talking about the Canada, US, any of the European countries, their production is 4 times or 5 times than Indian production in any of the crop.
Correct.
So you can enhance the production, you can provide the opportunity to the villagers or the farmers for trading their the production in different markets. So think about this.
Ali, you would like to take that?
Well, I mean, so one of the things that we've been discussing, I recently met Professor A.K. Singh, who's been the head of horticultural strategy for Prime Minister Modi. And, there's many fascinating opportunities and applications that we could apply to farming in India. I don't know if you saw in some of the presentations in the video today when we talked about, we presented Akisai, which is basically in Japan. Slightly different problem to India, but one of the things in Japan, we're having many generations of farmers leaving the industry. So rather, the expertise that is based in the traditional farming methodologies is being lost. And we're having to find ways in which the government of Japan can support better farming methodology, better farming techniques through technology. And one of the things that we were discussing with Professor Singh is how to enable farmers in India to realize the benefits of that, to move from traditional methods and start to embrace technology to get better crop yields. And clearly there are many technical challenges. I mean, we have many examples. You saw the one in terms of vegetable, or next generation cultivation of vegetables in Japan. That's a great example. In India, there are many diverse crops, there's many diverse applications that we could use there. And one of the things we started talking about was how to link the Japanese government to what is happening in the Indian government and to share the experiences of how we're going about that. So I actually think that this is one of the areas in which, from a social environment point of view, Fujitsu can work very closely with government in India to realize some things. I think the challenges culturally in India are going to be very different to the ones we faced in Japan. And I think that's the thing where we need to really listen very closely to both farmers in India, but also the government in terms of the way that we can enable that to happen at some sort of scale. I think, Solomon, if you want to pick that up.
No, I think that's perfect. We're aware of this particular problem, and there are many ways are being devised to try and solve that and take it there. One of the things are that first is the information to the farmer that what's going to give him the best yield, right? I think we're also quite far from that stage. We do understand from whatever we have been doing historically, but access to them is becoming important. And one of the first things that's being envisaged is how do you come, if there's some crop that needs some specific pesticides or something like that, what is the best option that I can get, consult, or do? And so it's more of an information flow in the initial stages, followed by some of the great solutions that in developed markets that Fujitsu has been able to do. That will definitely, kind of increase the yield. So I think if we take it up in stages, from first dissemination of information to the transition of how advanced methods of farming could be applied to crops, we do need it because we need a lot of food grains to be able to support 1 billion people, more than anybody else probably. Yeah.
I am from Schneider Electric, Gaurav Verma. As so likely said, one of the consideration to growth is the culture. And then the gentleman from the Intel said today the computing is going to a level where we are talking about face recognition with very less of false ratio, which is still a challenge. And then Sir from SAP talks about applications coming as an integral, the top layer of Internet of Things. We see it quite interesting. We are hearing it for past couple of years. But how do you see this evolving in the Indian landscape, where the gentleman said connectivity is a challenge, culture is a challenge? Because you can't ask technology to do everything, because we bring human and machine together to work smartly. Internet of Things would not be worked without human in place. Culture is a big challenge. And culture would not only from the government and from the technology provider, it would be from the users as well. So how do you see these things evolving? Maybe Mayank and the sir from Intelisys and from SAP, because you know the Indian DNA, how do Indians behave? How this can unfold forward, effectively implementing projects like smart cities, initiatives like Internet of Things, going very effectively to tier 3, tier 4 locations.
This morning we had a Smart Cities forum with Vicky that was running in another part of the city. We've been doing a meta-study across Europe, Middle East, China, and Asia Pacific to try to understand the biggest usage models that there seems to be natural gravitation to around smart cities, to try to work out where it would seem that the most obvious impacts are being made. And there's about 25 usage models across that part of the world that is coming up. And inside of that 25, there are five most consistently usage models. The first is traffic congestion. And we think of that in the spirit of just getting caught. We all frankly get upset about getting caught in traffic. That's not really the driver. The spillover effect of traffic on the economy is measurable. We just did a study to understand what the impact of traffic is to healthcare. We think about treating healthcare with building more hospitals. We just ran a project in Taiwan where it was the tracking every invoice in the whole country was what triggered a reduction in the demand for beds in hospitals. And the reason for that is that as we understood every single thing that was purchased, particularly food, we could immediately track through a dynamic real-time big data application when there was a food poisoning outbreak, immediately stop and track where that problem was. So when we look at the usage models for smart cities, before we jump into building a lot of big infrastructure, having fused data that gives us much better insight to where problems can be stopped at the source can actually help us to drive where to start in smart city. We can immediately jump to start rolling out things like telehealth, where quite frankly, you may not even need to get there if you stop the problem early enough with some of these uses of IoT and analytics. So look, there's a lot of experimentation going on. I think we're all still learning. But to the points that Paul made earlier, we're never going to learn if we sit on the fence. We've got to get our hands dirty and start working out what works. On the policy side, big issues associated with security surveillance. You think that's a big problem just on fixed digital security surveillance. Wait till you enter the drone world. That just gets turned up a whole new level. So a lot of aspects there.
Yeah, let me just add to those points, and I think they're all very well made. My comment earlier today around India being more advanced from a cultural point of view stands and should be valued, because I think your ability to adopt and progress quickly is something that will add value. Now, you have a different set of challenges that others in the world don't have in terms of some of the established infrastructure and network connectivity across the country, and so maybe some of the user-centric potential is going to be lagging behind slightly, but actually I think that still shouldn't stop India as a country progressing rapidly in some of the other areas. And just the thing I would encourage you to do is just use what has made you as a nation successful to your advantage, because it's a distinct advantage right now. Don't try to copy the West or other areas too relentlessly on the idea that everyone else knows better, because I can honestly tell you from an outsider looking in, everyone is fascinated by how you guys make it successful. Everyone wants to learn from you. So make sure that you use that to your advantage, and the challenges you identified do exist. They exist everywhere in different ways, but making those baby steps and making the thing move and get the momentum there, I think you'll find that the cultural barriers that others have will be a huge advantage.
Okay, so one more question, and I think then we're running out of time.
Thank you. My name is Rajasthu Kaushik. I own ICT in India. For all those who are currently thinking what is ICT here, is my company that I'm planning to launch, Indian Cloud Technologies. And my first question is that in recent presentations, it was told that Fujitsu is the only company which doesn't manufacture in China. So you manufacture in Japan and Germany. Recently, there was an initiative by Government of India that is Make in India. So is Fujitsu planning to take advantage of that initiative? That's the first question. Second question is, in August 1995, when I was in first semester of my engineering, HCI used to named as Human-Computer Interface. But today we see on the board it is Human-Centric Innovation. So what are those innovations that Fujitsu is planning on which we can count on in next year when we attend the same venue? Thank you.
So, I mean, to answer the first question, I think Make in India is an opportunity that any major manufacturer has to look at in a very serious way, right? I mean, given, I think the great stat that was put up was this gap of the 400 billion that could not be met by the way that India is manufactured today. I think that gives a great opportunity and certainly stimulated some new thoughts of me about how to discuss that with my executives in Japan. So I can't say definitively anything will happen, but my view is that any major manufacturer must look at that as a great opportunity. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing in terms of the whole thing about human-centric innovation is this thing about, most of my comments come with music as well. So that's one of the human-centric things. But on a more serious note, I think one of the things that we're trying to do is really put people's capabilities and creativity at the center of how we enable technology. And I think there are so many different facets of that. To name any one thing, whether it's the visualization technology, whether it's the technology we provide in devices, or in laptops, or in supercomputers, or in HPC environments, I don't think there's any one dimension you could say that actually changes things. I think it is putting it into the hands of people with creative talent, listening to those creative people and adapting our technology to their ability to exploit it is where we hope to succeed most.
I recently saw a video in which actually, till date, I only heard 2Ds and 3Ds. There was a presentation on 7D. I was wondering what all is that, and it was looking like as if this is also an innovation. Is there something that Fujitsu is also looking forward to?
Listen, I struggle with 3D, never mind 7D, so I don't feel qualified as a scientist or even an ex-software engineer to try and answer that. But I think my point is that the imagination and creativity is bringing all sorts of innovations to play. And I think for me, some of the exciting work that Simon is doing in terms of how the human mind adapts to the visualization and how actually that with really careful scientific research and mathematical research in terms of how algorithms can bring that visualization to something much more tangible and understandable by humans is the way that we see things evolve. And I think for me, it's those type of innovation that will bring in. And whether we do that with Fujitsu or whether the great computational capabilities of Intel brings that as a reality to us, to me that's some of the exciting things that happen. I think to the comment that the other colleague made earlier, for me there's an opportunity in India, the scale of experimentation, the scale of putting things out there to see what works and what doesn't is unprecedented. I think I'm so impressed that Fujitsu already has more than 167 HPC clients in India. The IIT, CDAC, and all of the institutional national infrastructure for supercomputing, people are experimenting in India at an unprecedented rate. When those experiments start to hit the commercial reality I think you'll see an explosion in great things. And that's a huge opportunity for Fujitsu to help India on its journey.
Right. So I think it's really interactive. Thank you for being here. And I would equally thank our eminent guests over here. Thank you. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.